I do think it's a tricky game for Oklahoma all of a sudden, putting together some pieces after we found out about Kennedy Brooks, Oklahoma's best running back, opting out, which was a total surprise, according to R.J. Young. Again, somebody that's been very close to that program for a long time. Oklahoma now will be without its top 3 running backs from last year. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be suspended for the K-State game. Trey Sermon left for Ohio State. And now Kennedy Brooks has opted out. They have the next stud at quarterback. To me, there's no doubt. Spencer Rattler was one of, if not the best, high school quarterback in the country when he came out, but he is a redshirt freshman that will be making his first conference start. There's also an injury at left tackle that Oklahoma is having to worry about. It's also, despite a game being played in Norman, going to be played in front of 25% capacity at best. It's not going to be what is typically a raucous environment. Hands down, the best environment in the Big 12. Not going to have that. To me, yeah, it adds up to a tricky game for Oklahoma. It does. I understand that you look at it and say, well, they'll be motivated because of what happened last year. All right, sure, that's great. That's all good and well. Oklahoma didn't feel like a team that was really non-motivated in that game against K-State last year. K-State just came out and took it to them, man. K-State just worked Oklahoma. And yes, granted, it was a good day and things started to break K-State's way, but that did not feel like a totally sluggish effort where Oklahoma did not bring the motivation. So I will say, I think despite all of K-State's flaws, of which there are many, I think that is a tricky game for Oklahoma with all of the eyeballs that will be on that on September 26th.
I agree, and I look at it in this sense, too, that you throw in the fact that with all these inexperienced guys having to provide new roles to Oklahoma, they're going to be coming off a game against Missouri State, maybe, if it gets played, but a game against Missouri State where you're not going to be challenged at all, so you're not going to get a real feel for anything. You're not going to get 2 non-conference games that are going to just kind of be, meh atmospheres for you or games that you would typically get up for. This isn't going to be, some random Texas school and then maybe some, non-Power 5 name that's out there. It's going to be a conference game against Kansas State, a team that you already know has one of the best coaches in the conference, and so many other things that will be going K-State's way where there's no doubt that the Wildcats will have their flaws this year, but I think going into that game, you would rather have their issues than what Oklahoma has. Now, talent-wise is a different story, but I still think that the issues both sides have, it leans more towards benefiting K-State.
Well, the reason I would say that Oklahoma's issues are more concerning from the standpoint of, I think Oklahoma, let me put it this way. Oklahoma has the talent to cover up issues to make it less concerning. But I think it will affect Oklahoma more than K-State's warts will affect them at that point in time. K-State has problems offensively, but that offense, which is replacing the entire offensive line, looking for actual skilled playmakers to stay healthy, all of those things. K-State is not overly reliant on the offense to win games. Oklahoma is absolutely overly reliant on their offense to win games. That's been discussed ad nauseum for years. Yes, Alex Grinch is a very well-respected defensive coordinator. He also did not turn them into a juggernaut last year. The last time we saw Oklahoma play football, it was literally Joe Burrow setting records all over those guys. It was Joe Burrow passing for a season's worth of yardage in one half. Their defense still has a long way to go and a lot of work to do. So it's incumbent on their offense to outscore teams. And I'm going to continue to believe that until I see actual visual proof that they can go out there and stop somebody.
Well, and, K-State obviously not as focused as much or doesn't need the offense as much to win games. It's the whole collection of what they do. But R.J. Young referred to it earlier and was talking about the offensive line play of K-State last year. For K-State, and for the most part, it's always been like this ever since Snyder 2.0 began, but it's more about the scheming and what the collection of guys can do, the coaches and players included in that, as opposed to what the talent can do. And I think that's another situation we're going down there. If you can just get the collection of things to work out for you, K-State can scheme a victory, more times than not than what, if Oklahoma's having an off day with their talent, they're just going to have an off day. And I think that's some of what happened last year in Manhattan, where there's no doubt that K-State played incredibly well, but also there was a little bit of a lull in there for the Oklahoma offense because they either weren't able to get onto the field or they made some dumb mistakes like, the trick play with the wide receiver, getting it deflected and it ended up in the hands of K-State for the interception. So I think that's another situation where getting accustomed to this season and immediately it being conference play against the team that beat you last year could be difficult for Oklahoma.
I mean, there's no doubt you're getting Oklahoma at the best time possible. Best time possible. There will be added pressure on Oklahoma at that point because there will be a ton of eyeballs on the game. It's the best game of the Big 12's opening slate on paper, especially because there will be so many that remember last year's game. It was over 5 million that watched that game on ABC last year, K-State beating Oklahoma. College football fans will have that ingrained in their mind. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that game. I get it, Oklahoma, you're used to playing with a lot of pressure, but this will be a different kind of environment and a different kind of football season. Neither team having much idea of what's going on. There will be a lot of uncertainty as to how that works. They will only have one game under their belt at that standpoint. I'll take the uncertain situation favoring the underdog. The more certainty you have, the more it's going to favor who's got the better players and who knows what they're doing more. Mix it up. That's what you want if you're the underdog, if you're K-State. I'll take Oklahoma's offensive issues, them being so reliant on their offense, the general uncertainty, and the fact that it's not going to be a raucous environment, and say, yeah, that's a tricky game for the Sooners.